Thanks everybody for coming out. First, I get a show of hands and see how many people have actually seen the film. Some, but not a lot. Okay, so
we're going to show it now then.
we've done a 45-minute cut. Now, well, sorry about that.
That's okay.
But we're going to do about 45 minutes of Q&A up here, and then we're going to bring out some microphone stands so you can ask some better questions of your own. But first, to give you a taste of the film, we'll watch the trailer. All right?
If you could take one guy to an island with you and you knew you'd be safe because he was the best man, he was going to keep you happy, if it was between me and your father, who would you take?
My daddy.
I think you're wrong about that. Hello, this is Lee. What happened to my brother?
So that's Lee Chandler.
I don't understand.
Which part are you having trouble with?
Well, I can't be his guardian.
Well, your brother provided for your nephew's upkeep. I think the idea was that you would relocate.
Relocate to where?
Well, if you look, it was my impression that you'd spent a lot of time here.
Sweetheart. I'm just a backup.
Lee, nobody can appreciate what you've been through. And if you really feel you can't take this on, that's your right.
Where are we going, to the orphanage?
Shut up. Get in the car.
Can't obey your orders until you unlock the door.
Whatever you decide, he can always stay with us if he wants to come up weekends.
Do you want to be his guardian?
Well,
He doesn't want to be my guardian, for Christ's sake.
Got a house full. We're trying to lose some kids at this point.
Hello.
Hello, Lee? I just went to call and say I'm sorry. How's Patrick doing?
Well, he doesn't really open up with me. Do you actually have sex with these girls?
Strictly basement business.
What does that mean?
It means I'm working on it. You don't want to be my guardian? That's fine with me.
Not that. It's just the logistics.
All my friends are here. I got 2 girlfriends, and I'm in a band. You're a janitor in Quincy. What the hell do you care where you live?
I said a lot of terrible things to you. My heart was broken, and I know yours is broken too.
No, you don't understand. There's nothing there.
That's not true.
Something wrong with me?
Do you want me to call your friends? What do you want me to do? I'm not gonna bother you. I'm gonna just sit here until you calm down.
All right, I'm calming it. Would you please just go away?
No.
Great white, you gotta be a barracuda. Who knows?
It's not a shark.
Come on, pull it up.
It's not a shark.
This is very funny. You like it? I see that you didn't use the tagline from your New Yorker interview recently, which was, there's no circle of life, it's just a straight line to death. I thought that would make a good poster.
Yeah, I didn't make the trailer.
The last time I talked to you, I realized it was almost 15 years ago. I profiled Kenny for New York Magazine in the wake of Lobby Hero and his Oscar nomination for You Can Count on Me, one of my favorite films.
Thank you.
And it was interesting reading back through interviews with you talking about Manchester by the Sea, because you were talking about some of the same themes that we talked about 15 years ago.
What can you do?
One of the quotes from our interview back then was, I think the thing I'm best at is small little dynamics that have a lot of resonance. I like to imagine that I'm interested in all of these little people underneath this huge sky.
Well, that's something I'm interested in. Whether I'm best at it or not, I don't know, but I'm very interested in it.
Yeah. Now looking back, you've got 3 films, and obviously the plays too, but in particular to the cinema, are you surprised to see certain themes emerging?
Not surprised, but it's not, I'm not surprised, but no, someone has to fix this. This is also not my doing. No, I'm not surprised. It's a little distressing sometimes. You look back and see you've only been talking about the same thing repeatedly at great length for your whole life when you thought you were engaging in all these varieties of experience. But It's hard for me to look at it all as one. I wish they could fix the mic.
Yeah, why don't we pause for a second? Is there something we can do with the mic, please?
Am I doing something weird to it?
We're not supposed to talk into it.
I'm not talking into it. It's right here.
It's for ambient.
This really does only happen to you, though.
Okay. How's that? Is that better?
The loud sound was great.
Yeah. No, this is still doing a weird reverb. What should we do?
Could we get...
Isn't this a great Times talk? How's this? I feel I'm keeping my voice
Use your
very
theater
modulated.
voice. Just
My theater voice? I can just project.
Is there anybody back there?
How does this sound? It sounds bad, right?
Yeah.
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 Sorry. It's not my fault.
We'll improvise here. I will see
Talk
if
to
somebody
them.
can come
Maybe
fix your mic while I ask you guys a question, which is, I think that question of small dynamics is something you two are both so brilliant at in this film. But I wonder, looking at his films, You Can Count on Me and Margaret, what was it about those films that made you want to join this project?
Okay, I'll take this one. Nope.
No.
well.
In the film, there's all this stuff that communication is difficult. There's phone calls dropping out. People can't hear each other at parties.
Your mic seems fine.
Mine seems. I'm going to give you mine.
No. I think it's got better
There
now.
we go.
Wait, I think it's better now.
I need a bunch of those.
Unless they just turned it off. This is much better now. It's just mine? Okay.
Thank you.
But I feel like now it's okay. Is it off? It's okay now. All right, well, let's just see what happens. This will be exciting for everybody. Okay. You were talking about me, my work.
Well, I thought we'd start by talking a bit about the other work before we get to this film.
Sure.
So, because I do think that the kind of films you're making are really unique right now, more unique than they should be. Like films like this used to not be that rare. Studios used to make films like this.
Yeah.
You didn't have to scramble to find money from independent financiers.
Well, I haven't had to scramble all that much. I've been pretty lucky in getting the pictures funded pretty quickly after they were written, within the year usually. So that's been great. But I think that only goes to show that there's a certain appetite, not for my movies, but for movies that are more akin to the movies they were making in the 70s, where it was a bit more driven by the individual. It was a little less anxious about explaining everything to the audience. It was focused on the content and not so much worried about the conveying of information and emotion in direct terms, which I think is something that some films suffer from. Of course, there are many great films of all kinds, and not just that kind.
Did you, after the experience of Margaret, Margaret's incredible. A lot of you probably didn't see the extended cut of Margaret. We wrote about the New York Times Magazine. Joel Lovell said it's a big, messy, problematic film. It's one that with precision and insight and empathy and large-heartedness that you almost never find in movies anymore, captures the bigness and messiness and problematicness of life and does it in a profound and lingering way. And the journey of getting that film into theaters was long and difficult. There was a lawsuit. And the cut that you preferred wasn't seen by the most people. At least now it's being seen
It's a little hard to know. Shit. It's a little hard to know because it's on the home. I don't know.
Can we maybe turn off this other one and try
Maybe
this?
we should just turn it off. Hello? Okay. Yeah, it's on. It's the extended edition is you can download it and you can rent it. So it's a little hard to know how many people have seen or not seen it.
Did that experience make you more determined to come back?
No.
In the next film? Do you have a chip on your shoulder?
Yeah. No, I really don't know. It was a long time ago now. It's a few years. That was released in 2012. The lawsuit was resolved sometime after that, and I've been working on this movie and other things in the intervening years. So it was a little bit tiring. It was a long, sort of wasteful process, but I was very happy with the result in the end, and very happy with the movie. So, how long are you going to sit on it as some agonizing experience you can't get over? That seems a little wasteful.
The two of you have both made, it's interesting that the studio system really is not supporting a kind of adult drama the way that it used to. And the two of you have both made some pretty bold choices in terms of the directors that you want to work with and made it a point to work with more interesting independent filmmakers. How do you see Kenny's films kind of fitting into the other sorts of work that attract you?
Well, I don't know. Ever since I started working about 20-some years ago, people said that they weren't making these kind of movies anymore. And they were, in 1989, there was like Spike Lee and Gus Van Sant and Steven Soderbergh all that came onto the scene, and Sundance Film Festival became a big thing, and there was independent movies sort of became like a household name in some way, I guess, and the idea of it and some of the movies themselves. But then also all at the same time, like there was that book, Spike, Mike, Slackers, and Dykes, which sort of was like celebrating those movies and also a dirge as well at the same time. And it seemed like everyone said, oh, but it's done, it's over. But that's mostly what I've done my whole career. So, and other people have done them too. And in the last few years, we've seen that those have been some of the best movies that have been out there, independently made movies of this size. And Kenny's work has always been the cream of the crop of that group of movies. So I feel like they'll probably keep making them, and that's the fact that they're sticking around and being made, whether they're being made by these little weird spin-offs of under the umbrella of the studios, which they were for a minute. Like every studio had their own little mini thing where they would make movies like this, and then a lot of those studios just folded those little companies up. But it didn't mean that they're not getting made. It just means that someone else is making them. And in this case, there's an independent financier who just paid for the movie. And that's, to me, is an indication that people still want to see them. And they'll probably always want to see them. That's great. I like to see them too, and I like to be in them. And Kenny's, this movie, as he says, it wasn't that hard to get made. In fact, you'd think it would be. If everything that they say about movies these days is true, they'd say, no one's going to see this, and there's no gigantic movie star in it other than Michelle, and there's, but there wasn't, and they got it made, and so here we are. Now we're having time to talk about it.
There you go. I feel like this is the first film that you've made that wasn't based on an original idea. Do you want to walk us through? I know you've talked about the process of this film coming together. Would you walk us through how this came together?
Sure. Matt Damon and John Krasinski came to me with the idea for the script, which was just a guy who goes back to his hometown to take care of his nephew after his brother dies, and who is left home because of a personal tragedy with his own children. And that was the core idea, and they asked me to write the script for it. Matt was going to direct it. John was going to be in it. Then John got busy doing something else. Matt was going to be in it and direct it. And then when I finished the script, Matt asked me if I wanted to direct it, and then I said sure, and then Matt couldn't end up being in it either. So he asked Casey to be in it, and which with my enthusiastic agreement, approval, etc. And so here we are.
There you go. That was good. That was concise.
You.
I was glad you went through that, and I didn't have to.
Most people don't tell me that I'm concise. But I try.
To give you a little more taste of the film, we've got a clip we'll show you of Casey and Michelle.
How is he? How's Joe?
He's fine. He's all right. Actually, he's all right.
And you didn't run out of beer? I mean, you got through the day okay?
Oh, yeah. We were very temperate.
I don't know why you guys bother getting on the friggin' boat.
What do you mean? We love the sea.
Oh, yeah? How many beers do you have on the sea?
8.
8?
Yep. 8 over a 7-hour period, which...
Wow, I am well...
I told you I was cutting down.
Oh, God, no. Oh, what do you think you're gonna do?
Guess I'm gonna take a shower.
Casey, do you want to tell us a little bit about your characters?
Why is that always the hardest question? It's really, I find that the hardest question, and the question that I'm always hoping, no offense, that I don't get. Because it's so broad. I mean, like, where do I...
They haven't seen it. You can say anything. Just maybe.
Why don't we talk about this scene? In this moment, we see them before a lot of other things happen. It's a flashback in the film. What's the relationship like at this point in the film?
I remember Kenny saying something at one point which reveals a lot about himself and his own marriage, that he thought that the ultimate relationship was where two people really made fun of each other a lot, and that they could laugh at each other, joke with each other, poke at each other, and that meant that you really loved somebody because basically like the insides match the outsides. Like there's nothing that's withheld, there's nothing that's like off limits, there's nothing that's too tender, and it's all done with like love and playfulness. And so I thought about that. He wasn't really relating it to our characters, but I thought about that in terms of these two, because something happens that does change their relationship. But I thought that when you met them, that you find them in the middle of this very, like just a very like active marriage, a sort of like how Margaret was described, like busy, boisterous, messy, real, communicative, you know, beautiful, chaotic thing. And then, you know, a change happens.
On a more practical level, how are these accents come about? I know there was some debate over how strong the accents should play as you were developing the characters.
No, there was a little discussion about it, but they both...
Casey refused to do it.
Casey didn't want to do it at first, but then he acquiesced. Why? Oh, yeah, why?
No reason. I mean, I think every little tiny thing gets talked about a little bit, whether it's the accent or whether he should be clean shaven or take care of his, you know, how he looks or not. And all those little things, it's nice to talk about them. And the accent was one of them. There's not everybody in that area has an accent, and I grew up nearby. I don't have an accent. So, I don't know, I thought, oh, maybe people won't have an accent. Maybe we don't have to do that, and then we don't have to worry about it being consistent and all the other things. And Kenny said he did want it to happen, and so we did an accent.
That's true. And I think Casey was worried about avoiding the cliche that sometimes circles around films that take place in this particular area, and I think it's a legitimate concern. But I know that he had a great ear, and he would do a good job with the accent, particularly being very familiar with it, so I wasn't worried about that.
Yeah. I've seen a couple profiles you've described him sort of lovingly as a relentless detective on set, asking lots of questions.
Absolutely.
What were some of those questions you were asking? I mean, that's an example where you're relentless, though, so what other subjects are you interrogating?
By the way, say relentless in a nice way. I mean, persistent and thorough is how I mean the word. When I say relentless, I mean persistent and thorough.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Okay.
I mean, I take that as a compliment, and whether it's persistent, thorough, relentless, or whatever. I think
exhausting is another word.
Exhausting.
There's another word that comes to mind.
I take that as a compliment. There's not a lot of time to make a movie, and you don't want to miss any opportunity, and you don't want to leave any stone unturned. You want to like do as much as you can in that period of time. So I like to talk about every possibility, and also that's the fun part. Like, why be an actor or go make a movie? You just think, we'll just do it this way. Let's not think about it. That's no fun. It's nice to, especially with a text that is so rich, it could be done a lot of different ways. You know, like plays, they do them over and over and over again, and they're never the same. I was in This Is Our Youth in London, and I saw it in New York, and I thought, boy, that's different and amazing. And so there are a lot of different ways to do things, especially how Kenny writes, and I like to talk about it, so we talked all about everything.
Yeah. Is part of it come from the fact that you're beginning to direct your own work?
No.
No, different.
I think it really just comes from the fact of having been in a number of movies and thought like, boy, what if it was done that way, or what if it was done that way, and having missed opportunities in the past, and also wanting to learn. You know, part of it is like you do a movie and you get a little bit better, and you take that onto the next movie. And this was an opportunity to kind of pick Kenny's brain a bit and find out, well, why would he want it that way instead of this way? Because he always had a good reason. And sometimes he was open to hearing what our reasons are too, and why he expected us to do what actors should do, which is to have their own opinions and have a version. You've done our homework. Have a version of the character that we believe in, that we think works. And he was very respectful of that. And then he had his own opinion, and then we would sort of mix it all up, and we'd come up with what worked best.
Let's take it out. We've got a very different scene of the two of you working together. We'll take a look at that one real quick.
won't go home with tears. All right.
Hey! You want to keep it down, you fucking morons? My kids are sleeping.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry, Ray.
I mean, I didn't think we were that
Lee?
loud.
You want to get these fucking pinheads out of my house, please?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I really do. She can't talk to us that way.
Hey! I'm not fucking around!
So Michelle, let's talk about that scene like that. You're not on set every day. You're there less than the rest of the cast, and you've got to jump into a scene like that.
Don't tell them that.
What is it?
They don't know. They don't have to know that. How?
What's it
Small
like jumping
my
into that
brothers.
craziness all of a sudden?
That was 2:00 in the morning, if I remember. Like that was. That was. We had done other things that day, and that was the last thing to do that day. As far as coming in and out, not necessarily for that scene, there was a certain kind of rhythm up and running. I was like comfortable with these guys, but as far as like jumping in and out to something, it's sort of like these guys were like doing laps around the track, and I had to kind of each time sort of I was like cold starting it, and so I spent just a tremendous amount of time in the area. Not with them, like I wouldn't even go visit set or even tell them that I was around, God forbid they like wanted to rehearse or something, because I was like busy stalking people. When you don't have a lot of screen time in which to communicate a person, I just felt like the details become even more important, and I'd wanted to work with Kenny for 12 years. I'd just like prayed that he would cast me in something, and so I might have overdone my prep time a little bit just because I was so nervous about letting you down.
What about me?
You all deal with it.
You didn't let me down. That's fine.
You didn't let anyone down.
So to not have that feeling of kind of cold starting, it felt really important to me to feel really connected to the place and to the people, and to be sort of armed with a lot so that there wouldn't be a kind of discrepancy between us. But there were a lot of, we were saying earlier, and it's so true, like Casey was talking about how you would get to set and like there would be the most amazing New York actors that had come up for a day for a line, like Tony winners. You'd be like, because everybody's just so excited to, to get that phone call and to like people Kenny's world. And also Kenny would work with everybody so specifically. I remember once we were rehearsing around a table, and I was playing like a woman in the beginning who was getting like the plumbing fixed in her apartment or something, and Kenny gave me notes on it. He was like, I was like, this is not actually my part. But he like made me do it like 3 or 4 different ways, like around like the table. Like, it's actually more like she's like had this kind of a day, and she's really got more of this on her mind. I'm like, okay, she's 80, but I'll try. So it was a very rich on-set experience, and I really tried to make it feel like I was sort of shooting all the time so that I could keep in pace with them.
I changed my mind about saying what I was going to say, but now I'm going to do it. I have a theory I was telling these guys earlier that I just put together today that I really like, but I think it says something about Kenny and the whole process that there were all these little parts in the movie, like the person that Michelle was playing there in the rehearsal, that there are little speaking parts in the movie, 1 or 2 lines here and there, and I sort of assumed that Kenny was going to cast people from the area because that has become kind of something you do in movies, especially movies that have this kind of the sort of naturalistic feel that this movie has, and all of his other movies do too. And it wasn't always the way it was done in movies. Like that started to happen more and more. You just fill them in with these people, you give them 1 or 2 lines. They're not actors; they're quote-unquote real people. And so, and I think I might have even advocated for that at one point. And Kenny said he didn't want to do that, and he had all these actors who were, as she's pointed out, like great, like theater actors or people from other places, and they would come in and do this stuff. And I think that it's at the time, I wasn't even thinking about this, but now looking back, it feels like it's a really very beautiful expression of faith in actors and what they can do and what they're capable of, that he casts people who aren't the kid. Like Lucas Hedges is not a kid from that area, and he had never done an accent before, and Kenny asked him, said, you can do an accent, you can find this character, and same for me and for Michelle, who's been through many huge transformations and other characters in her career. It's not so surprising, but for other people it is it's a lot to ask of them. And even for the tiniest roles, he really invests a lot, and he casts real actors to come and play them. And it's a very that's the end of my theory, and it's not so complete, but it is really a comment on the faith that Kenny has in actors and how he likes to make a movie, and it's something I am grateful for and I love to watch.
That's very generous, and thank you. But we also did cast a lot of actors from the area, so the two things kind of go together.
Well,
but not just. We had a lot of New York actors and a lot of local actors from the Massachusetts, Boston area. But yeah, I do like actors, and I do have a lot of faith in them, and for good reason.
I wonder if is part of it that in films like this, and Margaret in particular, I remember there just being characters not quite knowing where the story is going to take me, because I'm constantly seeing a number of interesting, recognizable characters. The camera's lingering on certain people maybe longer than it might in another film.
No, I mean, I think it's mostly because I think that if you're going to have a character in the film, it should be a character that's worth watching. And you watch some of the best movies and plays, and well, the movies more because there are many opportunities for smaller parts, but you don't want a human being in the movie that's just a function of the plot or a function of another character. That's kind of boring. So I think you want every character, ideally, to be a character you would like to play yourself, or that somebody would enjoy playing. Look at like Almodovar's work, and all the parts are interesting. Even the teeny people with one line, he'll give them something to do. He'll create a situation that makes the little exchange interesting. Or older Hitchcock movies, everyone has a little something to do, because otherwise, why have them there? They become a cipher and cardboard, and you have that much less life in your story.
This film is in large part about grief and learning to live with grief or to overcome tough things that happen in your life. As the child of two therapists, how much does therapy kind of hang over your work? How much is this film responding to the kind of therapeutic language of other films we see?
Not at all, I hope.
Yeah.
I think it's my mother and stepfather are psychoanalysts, and I grew up in a household where that was discussed a lot, but a lot of other things were discussed also, and I think that's one level to look at human behavior, but it's a kind of a reductive level in a way, because it's really just personal to the individual. My psychology is not terribly interesting. It's not interesting enough to turn into a story. It's the story that's interesting, and all the other people and their psychologies and how everyone relates to the bigger world outside, which is not psychological necessarily. There's always that level to it, but I hope there's more than that, because it just kind of devolves into jargon, and there's just a certain reductive quality to any point of view that's limited by its own boundaries, psychology or religion or politics. I think art is supposed to embrace everything if it can, and not just one element or another.
I think a lot of other films maybe are more sort of structured in a way. It sort of supplies uplift at the end and conclusion and catharsis, and you've talked a little bit about this film sort of not giving you that closure that we're used to seeing.
Yeah, I mean, having said that, I'm really interested in personalities and psychology. I mean, so it's clearly a big interest of mine, and of anyone, I think, in the performing arts, really, or in the dramatic arts, let's say. But I'm interested in trying to recreate life in some way, and I think there are a lot of ways to do it. The way I've been interested in for many years is through the details and specificity and verisimilitude of psychology and behavior, and not skipping over things that happen to us in real life, like the microphone not working, or which is not very serious, but you know, if you're having a crucial phone call with someone that's very important and the phone cuts out, it's very it's really turns into a big deal. Or if you can't get to the hospital in time because of the traffic, it's a big deal. Or just, you know, anyone here could think of dozens of examples where the details of life that are often skipped over in films create tremendous drama in real life. And that's my way in sometimes, not always. And part of that, of course, is human psychology. But I thought really in terms of the ending of the film and what happens in the film, I was just interested in letting the story and the characters dictate the reality and not try to impose something that's not suited to it. It's a little hard to talk about if you haven't seen the film, but I'm usually trying to say what would happen, not what should happen or what could happen, but what would happen if this were real, and if these people were real and had been through these experiences. What is a believable and human thing? What's a believable and human result? And once you come to that result, then I think you do have a dramatic arc, even if it's not a traditional one. Or I don't know. And I'm not interested in being traditional or non-traditional. I'm not interested in that. I'm just trying to be true to life, if I can be, which is why you cast really great actors, because they really know how to do that better than anyone.
I wonder for you two, were there moments that you read? I was struck over and over by the little surprises in the film. You know, little things I didn't expect to see, like the gurney not making its way into the ambulance, or little difficulties, little moments of friction in the film. And since people haven't seen it, those moments when reality sort of intrude into this film, were any of those there that kind of surprised you on that first read of the script? And you said, well, why is this? Why is this happening here? Or no, it all made sense?
Well, some of those were accidents.
Mm-hmm.
Like the gurney is what happened on set, but you try to embrace those as they're happening. But what else? Well, she has a cold in that scene. We have a steam machine going. Mm-hmm. It's not Lawrence of Arabia, but I think it's interesting.
Mist machine.
Well, I just remember, I'll let you guys answer, but I remember seeing Erin Brockovich, and there's a section in which Julia Roberts has a really bad cold, and she stays home from work. And I actually really like that movie, but I also remember thinking, gee, I almost never seen the main character come down with a really bad cold in the middle of the story in any movie. And I was just really impressed by that, because people get colds all the time in the middle of their lives, and you just don't see it in the movies that often.
Well, we'll take a look at another clip here. We get to see Kenny do something on screen.
This is going to be a real treat.
Right, you got a lot to do.
What about the boat?
We'll talk to George about it. There's no use hanging on to it. No one's going to use it.
I'm going to use it.
It's got to be maintained, Rich.
Maintaining it? I'm going to maintain it.
Show it to me. You can't maintain it by yourself.
Why not? It's my boat now,
You're
isn't
a minor.
it?
You can't take it out alone. And I'm the trustee.
What does trustee mean?
I got to keep up the inspections. It means I'm in charge of handling everything for you.
Does that mean you're allowed to sell the boat if I don't want you to?
18. I don't know. I'll definitely consider it.
No fucking way.
You were misinformed.
A few technical difficulties tonight, but yeah, the scene ends. You want to just either one of you want to describe the scene? You were there.
Scene
Casey.
ends with that argument continues, and then Kenny is someone else walking down the sidewalk. He's got a big blue coat on. He looks sort of foolish, and he says, "Great parenting" to me as I'm berating the kid a little bit, and that sets me off, and I start yelling at him and try to start a fight, and the kid holds me back, and then we get into the car. It's amazing.
We're just going to narrate the rest of the clips.
Okay.
Why the cameos? Why has this become a signature for you?
Oh, I don't mean it to be a signature. I just like to do it.
Yeah.
That's all. I was in the shows in high school, and everyone else went off and became an actor, and I didn't. So I just cast myself because no one else will.
Oh, and I hear that scene has its roots in a very New York moment. It sounded like.
Yes, that actually happened to me. I was walking my then 10-year-old daughter to school, or 9 or something, and she was You don't really want to hear this, do you? Anyway, she was giving me a really hard time, and I was really angry at her, and I had a very bad temper in those days, and I was praying that she would make up with me by the time I dropped her off at school, because I knew if she didn't, that I would then be in a rage and a terrible stew all day long till 3 o'clock, at which point she'd be like, oh, yeah, I forgot we even had a fight. So I said to her at some point, I said, Nellie, we crossed 7th Avenue, and I got to Christopher Street, and I said, are you still... can we make up now? And she's like, no. And I completely blew my top, and I said, oh, Nellie, you don't cut it out, I'm gonna knock your fucking block off. This little girl, okay? Nice, right? So this guy right across the street said, great parenting to me across the street. And so I reacted as everyone does and said, mind your fucking business and all this stuff. And we yelled at each other for a while, and then we went on our way, and then she said, you shouldn't have cursed at him. He was wrong to yell, but you shouldn't have cursed at him. And I said, well, actually, honey, he was right, and I was wrong. He doesn't know I would never knock your block off, and you shouldn't be yelling at a little girl in the middle of the street. And he was trying to be nice and be on your side. And so that's that story.
I think anytime we're going through something difficult, there's that stress that kind of bubbles up and explodes. And
that's what it was. It was stress.
And in the movie, Lucas Hedges, who plays the boy, says at some point, you can't say those things. You can't speak like that. And it seems to me that's a thrill sometimes of your writing, is that often characters are exploding and saying these things we kind of wish we could before it gets quiet again. Was that?
I kind of like that Lucas's character knows what's appropriate and what isn't, and Casey's character really doesn't, because he's so cut off from normal human discourse. He's living in a very self-protected world for good reason, as you'll see if you see the movie, and it creates a strange disconnect between what's a normal conversation and what isn't. And in a clip, he asks someone else if the other character wants to be Lucas's guardian, and afterwards Lucas is just appalled and says, you cannot speak to people that way. And Casey's character says, I'm just trying to figure out what to do, which is what he is doing, but he's doing it in a way that comes from another, a very distressed and overly formed approach, because he's trying so hard to keep all these terrible feelings that he has at bay, and it makes him act in a way that's unusual.
I think he does know what's normal. He just cannot bring himself to do it in certain moments.
Oh.
It's impossible for him, but some part of him understands that he seems like a crazy person, or that he's dealing with people in a way that is off-putting to them.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
When I wrote the piece, that is what I intended.
Well, but I think that's really true. I think that's true. In fact, I think we discussed that a little bit. Like, you can kind of see what's expected of you from a distance, but you don't do it.
Right.
Okay, so I'm wrong.
Is this a little bit what it was like working together?
This is exactly, yeah, but much more fun.
Yeah. I was wondering.
No, seriously, this is a little bit what kind of thing we might have talked about, isn't it?
Yep.
Kind of, yeah. But I didn't have a microphone.
Well, sometimes I don't work
That's
anyway.
okay.
So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes is the wake, and I think we've all been in that situation where you're at a wake and everybody's kind of confused how to behave. Whether you should try to cheer the person up or whether you should just sort of look at your feet. I'm curious, like when you're working on material that's kind of this dark, do you also have that similar dynamic? You think, oh, this material is so heavy, I don't want to break the mood in between the scenes when you're on set?
No? I don't remember. Only a few times did he feel like not feel like I wanted to have conversation. But otherwise, I felt like we had rehearsed it a lot, and I really felt like inside of it, and so there wasn't anything that could break it, even if Kenny made a joke or someone else did, or we talked about other stuff, which happened all the time. It wasn't a very, very heavy set, but it was appropriately heavy when it needed to be, I guess.
Yeah. We've got people are watching this on Facebook Live, so I'm getting these questions from the internets. Here's one for you, maybe for all three of you. I mean, if you're a young person looking to get into film, what's your advice given the way the business is right now and how someone should start? Say you're like fresh out of college.
I think you should read Werner Herzog's book, A Guide to the Perplexed. And he talks a lot about just starting to do work right away and not waiting for people to give you work, and not waiting to be cast, not waiting to get funding, not waiting to be hired, but starting to do things. And work leads to work. And he's very much more of an independent, self-sufficient character than I am, but he's very good about that. And with the technology now and the amount of money it takes to do something, you could make your own film. In the 6 weeks you're taking to get a job on a film, you could make your own film and put it on the internet and get started that way. That's my advice.
You two want to add anything to that?
My advice would be much more discouraging. I'll go with that.
That sounds like good advice. And I think it is really easy now. People make movies on their iPhones, and you can do just about anything. The whole process of movie making has been totally demystified. There's programs, you can get an app to cut a movie, and it costs nothing. So, but you could also set about learning. You know what I mean? Looking researching, reading, and taking classes and doing all that. You can also, that really does amount to something. But at the same time, just keep making things is great advice. Yeah,
and my only real professional advice has always been make a lot of friends, because, and that may sound crass, but your friends are the people who are going to give you your first jobs. You have 10 friends who all want to be in show business, and 2 of them are going to end up in some office where they can recommend you or point someone in your direction or put your script at the top of the pile or the top of the computer slate or whatever it is. And that I never got a job until I was well into my 30s that I didn't get through some friend, never. And Casey, most of the people I cast because I knew them personally or because a friend knew them, and that's just the way most businesses work, including show business.
Another question here. A question about the sound, about the score. Why was classical music used for key scenes?
I like it. I really like classical music, and I go to the music that I like to look for what's going to work for the picture, and then a number of things won't work, and then something will drop in, and it'll work beautifully, and you keep it there. Through that process, a score forms, and Leslie Barber, the composer, also would write a few different things. We'd drop one in, and it would work beautifully, and that would be the beginning of the movie. And that's one of the most enjoyable parts of the process for me.
So here's one. What was your favorite part of making this film? Everyone always seems to want to ask that one.
I always say that there's one good day in an actor's life, because you spend a whole lot of time hustling for your next job, wondering where your next job is going to come from, praying for your next job, auditioning for your next job, writing a letter to get your next job. The day you get the job, because then after that, all you do is worry about the job. How am I going to do this job? Am I the right person for this job? I don't think I should do this job. They should fire me from this job. Maybe I should run away. So there's always that. So for me, that day that we had coffee and I cried.
Yeah, that was great.
And you said you wanted me to do your movie, and I said I've been waiting such a long time.
Yeah, and you said you wanted to do it. It was great. That was a really nice day. Yeah.
No, I liked the work too, but it comes with so much responsibility, and I always say it's so hard to feel satisfaction at any point in time. I think we've talked about this. When you leave a day on a movie set, you just leave thinking what did I do today? Was it any good? It's very hard to have a concept of if you contributed or didn't contribute, or what level you were. It's really hard to tell. You don't get to go home feeling satisfied in some way, in a way that's different when you do a play. So I enjoyed the work. I relished the words. I had wanted this thing. I prepared for this thing, and then I got to do the thing. But it's not exactly. It somehow doesn't make you feel full when you go home.
Yeah.
My favorite memory, is that what the question was? From the favorite moment on the set or whatever?
Sorry.
Well, oh man. It doesn't mean that I didn't really have, it's not a great memory, but I can't think of one thing. Except there was one scene that we shot where we had to do it all night long. And there weren't a lot of night shoots. Night shoots are terrible. And this one, when it was over, and there was a house that was burnt to the ground, and the sun was coming up, and all the work was behind us, it felt like a really, that was an okay feeling. other than that, despite all the laughs that we had, it was also kind of just a slog of kind of hard work, but at the exact same time, very, very satisfying. That's all I got.
I think we'll set up some microphones and we can take some audience questions. We've got a little more time left. But Kenny, I was wondering, this film's being released through Amazon. One of their tricks seems to be lately getting people's films and then convincing them to do TV shows. Can you see that as part of your future?
Well, I didn't know they were trying to trick me. I think there's a lot of really good television now, and they're trying to get everyone to do television, and a lot of people are doing television, a lot of really great people. So if I could have an idea for television that felt good to me, I would do it. I have no, why not?
Yeah.
I don't think it's a trick.
I know. Yeah, that way. Question over here.
I'm going to preface this by saying I think you hang the moon and we're the best Sally Bowles even over Liza. It's because of the way that you tackled the character and treated it in a way that most people don't on the stage when doing musicals. So I'm going to say, is there any other classic musical character that you would like to gift the audience with by really sinking your teeth into it?
Thank you. That's a really generous compliment. And it actually, funnily, I've never really talked about it because it hasn't really come up. That doing that play directly relates to doing this movie, because I did cabaret for a year, and it was harrowing, and it really drove me into the ground, and I was sort of a shell of a person afterwards. The learning was so hard and so steep, much more difficult than I could have anticipated. But when I got to make this movie, this isn't really a question, but I've thought about it and I've never really talked about it. When I got to make this movie, when I went to work on this set, I felt it all pay off. It's like I'd been training with heavy weights, and then they were lifted, and I was running faster. I had more flexibility, I had more freedom, I just had more than I was used to available on this film than I'd ever experienced before, and it was exactly because of that very, very difficult learning. So I'm glad that I took on something that I, was that arduous and demanding. But I also loved it in equal measure. I'm doing a movie right now that's singing and dancing, because as difficult as that experience was, the singing and dancing is just transcendent joy. And I was I've just got to get more of that. So if you have any ideas for me, please do come up to me afterwards, because it's I'm musical crazy. But so many of them are just they're just too perfect to touch, certainly on film, to redo something on film. But I'd be super happy if you could tell me what you think I should do. And thank you.
I thought Blackbird was amazing, so just keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That's so much.
Question over here.
I saw this movie at the New York Film Festival, and I thought it was phenomenal in every way possible. And to whoever's opened, did this movie help you guys ease emotions, ease your emotions in the characters you played?
I think that did it help us ease our own? Did the playing of the roles help us deal with our own emotions? If I understand?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think one of the things of being one of the things I like about being an actor is that you get to kind of dabble in other people's lives a little bit and feel things experience them as real, even though they aren't really real, and you get to walk away from them eventually. So you get to kind of have many lives, and the more that you invest in each life, the more you get to have those lives, and the fuller the overall experiences of your career. And sometimes the thing isn't always sort of worth your investment, and you're doing that because you're just someone who needs to work like everyone else. And every now and again, certain jobs that you take just because you have to take work and there's nothing great around, but every now and again there's things like the work that Kenny does, and you get to invest everything you have, and you're repaid tenfold by the richness of the experience and what you've learned. So in some way it's sort of you get to put some of your own sorrows or whatever into the movie and process them and experience them a little bit, and if that's what you mean, I guess. And that is one of the better parts of being an actor, I guess. Whoa.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thanks. That's a hard one.
Question over here.
I saw this film at New York Film Festival too, and just personal thoughts, it's my favorite film of the year. And I just wanted to ask you and Michelle, there's one scene in the middle of the film where, I think it's actually close to the end of the film, where you see each other for the first time and you two are alone. And I think that's one of the most powerful scenes I've ever seen in cinema in my whole life. And I just wanted to know how you two prepared for this scene.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I mean, it all starts with, it was written that way. Like, it was a beautiful scene. And so often, like, you're on a movie and you're really trying to figure out how you're going to make something work. Like, it doesn't make sense, and so you're trying to, you say, look, I'm going to cut that, I'm going to do that with a look, and you're just trying to make the thing make sense. And so you don't have to do any of that work when you get this scene. You just have to rise up to the level of the material. And as far as the preparation, we didn't really wind up sort of running it as much as I think that we had thought that we would. Remember we were supposed to get together and do the lines? Yeah. Do you remember? I was like, Casey?
Yeah.
And you were like...
No, that's not true. No. We did get together.
But you did get together a little bit. You said something really nice about this afternoon, if I can just quote, I can quote you. You don't have to quote yourself, but she's that in a way they prepared the scene, but they also were dodging around it a little bit in a similar way to how the characters are likely dodging around seeing each other in that very small town, which is something that's bound to happen sooner or later. And it's a conversation that Michelle's character wants to have, conversation that Casey's character is desperate to avoid. And Michelle said something very, I thought, smart about it today, but just how actors tend to unconsciously create a ghost or shadow relationship in real life to the relationship. Oh, you said that? Well, anyway, I actually think it's something we've all said. I think it's something we've all discussed in the last.
Go ahead, I
don't think anyone really has ownership.
I happen to be the last guy to say it. That's all I'm saying. It's not,
so apparently Michelle didn't say this, but Casey said it. And yet I remember it being Michelle. In any case, it's a common.
It was mine.
Yeah, it was Matt. It was Michelle. It was really Michelle.
But I do think you can tend to create, which can be like a little bit dangerous for your life, and you kind of have to keep it in check. But you can create an unconscious scenario that's going to aid and abet the work that you're going to attempt, and there was a lot of. The scene kept being postponed. Like, we were supposed to film it a few times, and it kept being postponed. And I think that also sort of created that environment of like, when is this going to happen? When is this going to happen? Which is exactly what these two people would have been feeling in this town. Like, it's only a matter of time. But I knew that there was a lot on the line that day. I mean, it felt like going to the guillotine. I really felt like I woke up that morning like, oh no, like the time has come. Because it's like an incredible opportunity. As much as sort of it's nerve-wracking and stuff, it really is like that's the scene that you just spend your life hanging out for as an actor, like waiting, and then there it is.
I mean, it's true. Other than it being a scene that did inspire a special amount of dread, it was also, we just prepared for it like other scenes where we talked about it in rehearsal. We talked to Kenny about it. We talked to each other about it, and then we would think about it in the context of everything else that was happening in the story, and then we'd show up there on set and we'd know our lines, and we kind of jumped into it. That Kenny shot it with 2 cameras at once, and we didn't do it that many times, and then it was done.
Question from over here.
Hi. First of all, I'll never get a chance, most likely, to ever say it's again. Michelle, you did so well in Blue Valentine. I don't know what to say. So just great job.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
For all 3 of you, in a deeply moving and sort of tragic movie like this with flashback sequences and all that, how did you get through editing in a way that didn't, because in a movie like this you'd think you'd want like a 3.5-hour movie of footage. Obviously you had to get that to a certain point where everyone is pleased. how do you deal with that in a movie like this with so much emotion? You know, are there some scenes that you'd wish that you had back in the movie? Ken especially, but I guess everyone?
No, not for me, no. I mean, I think this always felt like a fairly normal length movie to me. It didn't seem like it would require 3 hours to tell this story. I don't think you could tell this story over 3 hours. I think the material and the length suit each other fairly well, and I always felt that way about it. There are some scenes that we shot that I cut because they seemed to me to be doubling over in emotional value what was already there, or a little too relentless possibly, or just unnecessary. Like the story would be there already, so you didn't need this scene that I thought you had, that while writing I thought possibly we needed. And they don't know because they didn't see they were not part of the editing process. But you might have, I don't know, are there any scenes that you shot that you missed when you saw it? You haven't, Michelle hasn't actually seen the film. Because for good reason, I think, by the way. But I think it's hard for actors to watch themselves sometimes. But I don't want to speak for you. But I made Casey. Casey didn't want to see it either, but I made him watch it because I have easier access to Casey than to Michelle, so I really pressured him.
I did want to see it, but I'm having a hard time remembering scenes that were cut out. There was a slightly different ending. There was one scene at the end that we didn't even shoot that I really wanted them to shoot. It wasn't a big Lee scene or anything. I didn't want to shoot for my character's arc or whatever, but it was something that I just always thought was very, very a beautiful ending to the movie. It turned out that there was a different beautiful ending to the movie that Kenny found, but at the time I was very attached to that and fought for it to be filmed. There was also a slightly different ending to the walking up and bouncing the ball thing, and I'm not sure what else might have been cut out, but I don't miss anything. When I watched the movie, I was totally swept up into it, despite being in it and having to see myself. I was caught up in the story, and I didn't miss anything. I mean, you know, I'll say in private when I miss.
Thank you.
No. Good question over here.
I'm from Manchester, or Vegas, as we like to call it. And you're right, we don't drop our R's until we've had a few beers. But I was wondering, what was it about the town or the area that set the tone for the movie? And I haven't seen it yet.
It was an arbitrary choice at first. It was where John and Matt said they wanted to set it, but they didn't care if I changed it to somewhere else, and I thought it was a good idea. I had not been to Manchester. I'd been to Gloucester a few times, and I have relatives in Brookline and Newton, which I know is different, but it's not as different as New York. And then I thought it was a good title and a good setting, and I learned about the town and weaved it into the story, I hope, inextricably. And some people do drop their R's. It's a mixed bag, which is what we have. No, but if you see the film, you'll see that not everyone drops their R's. Just some do, some don't, just like it is in real life, I hope. Anyway, but we'll see. I'd be curious to see what you think when you do see the film.
Thank you. Good question over here.
So in You Can Count on Me, one of my favorite scenes is when they're in the restaurant talking about religion and like believing or not believing. And then I think I read in the New Yorker interview that was kind of like the germ of the movie, and it kind of grew from there. Yeah. Do most of your works start from like a scene or just like an idea like that and grow, or is that unusual?
Let's see. No, most of them don't start from a thematic idea. That one was a somewhat of an assignment that my theater company, Naked Angels, used to do these evenings of one acts based on a common theme, very, very general. And you'd have to think of a way to write a scene that connected to that theme. That evening, the theme was faith, and you could take it any way you wanted it. But for the most part, I start out, and even in that case, the real functioning, the part of the work that's working starts out with characters in a situation, whether it comes out in a full scene or just an idea, the core notion that I was given for this particular story. But I can't really get very far if I don't have really vivid characters in my mind who seem to exist as if they were real people, who I can listen to in my head and not have to work to think of what they would say. And this story didn't take off until that happened, and no story I've ever written has ever taken off until that happens.
Cool, thank you. Question over here, and then we'll just do 2 more over here if we've got time for.
I'd love if all
one on each side after you, sorry.
I'd love if all three of you could answer this. This is specifically about the film, but do you have a memory from your childhood where you saw a certain film or a play or something that influenced you in such a way that you knew that this is what you wanted to do, that you wanted to make films?
I remember, I have a few early memories of movies, but they didn't make me think this is what I want to do. I didn't really think this is what I wanted to do until in high school, late in high school, and then moved out to LA, and I still kind of go back and forth sometimes. But early on, I watched The Elephant Man very early on, probably too young, and I remember being very, very upset by it, and then going back and watching it alone again, and I'd seen it many times over, and so that was a movie that had a big impact on me.
I remember seeing a play when I was a little girl, and I remember that you had to walk by the backstage area, and it was uncovered, or there was like a gap in the curtain or something. And I saw everything that was going on behind the scenes, and I saw people helping each other get dressed, and I remember the roof was leaking, and everybody was talking and like doing each other's makeup, and I really liked that because it seemed like a sort of family. And then I remember sitting in the seat and feeling like these people are in front of me and anything could happen. Like they're actually, I don't know what's gonna happen because this is all like in real time. And I remember gripping onto my seat like it was gonna like take off. And I'd never had that experience watching a movie. And I like I kind of like the decrepitness of it, like the sort of like, it was in a strip mall and like it was like leaking, which is why I'm like independent cinema is like for me. Because I like that like community thing where like the insides and the outsides are kind of like in harmony.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with the theater when I was in high school, just being my first play in 8th grade, I think, and then all through high school, just loving being backstage and being on stage, and just loving the fact that it's the artificiality is right in front of you, and everyone's contributing to make it not artificial. Audience and the people who are working on the play, and just being in the wings and the costumes and everything Michelle just described so beautifully. So it makes the idea of doing theater and film very exciting. I also didn't have a film that made me want to be a filmmaker. But I did fall in love with movies at a very young age, particularly like Humphrey Bogart movies like Casablanca or To Have and Have Not, and films like that. But it was only later that the two sort of went together, when I was in my 30s, actually.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, we've just got time for one more question, folks, so we'll do this one over here. Yeah.
Thank you, all three of you, for telling this story and making this film. It really impacted me in a very profound way. In regards to the theater, I know you guys have all worked in the theater a lot, and I'm curious, I mean, seeing this film, the spontaneity and specifics of it is something you don't always get out of film, and it felt like almost a live performance in a lot of ways. How do you think that your experience in the theater informs your approach to making films?
Well, the theater gives you a tremendous respect for the actors because everything rides on them in the end. Everyone else has to go away and be quiet, and the lights come on, and the whole play is given to the actors. And at a certain point in the process, and I remember this even in high school, at a certain point you say, okay, we've all done all of our background work and our homework, and we've got everything's decided, and now you have to go out and make the show your own. And even when you write the show and direct the show, it's not your show anymore, it belongs to the cast. So and it never works unless that happens. If the actors are just hitting the marks that they had to hit in rehearsal, then something's wrong. Once they and something magical happens, it comes to life in some way that nobody could have imagined, and you can't repeat exactly from night to night, and oughtn't to repeat, because it wouldn't be as alive if you were repeating last night's performance. So that's something and film captures that process in smaller pieces, but captures the moment during a take when they do it like they've never done it any other time, when they really make it their own. So I think there's that connection. But for me, I try to bring the kind of love and respect and worship that I have for great acting into the process, and try to create an environment where the actors can do their best, because as I've said before, and I'll say it again, the script can be lousy and the direction can be lousy, but if the acting's lousy, you've got nothing. It's great to have great script, great direction, and great acting, but you need the great acting or you don't have anything worth watching.
That's good. We'll end it on that note. Guys, I want to say one thing before we wrap up. This film is obviously getting tons of attention, and one of the things about being on this Oscar circuit and people calling it one of the best films of the year is that they've got a lot of places to be. So we're going to ask everyone to hold your seats while these folks walk out because they got to get to another event. But we want to thank you all for coming and really thank you all for talking about a great film.
Thank you so much.